Love you, Kale. Hey, so we're in the middle of the season right now called Seasons, and today I want to talk to you a bit about what I want to get out today is I want to ask you the question, what season are you actually in your life? I think a lot of the times we think we're in a certain season and we're not actually in that season. And so if you get anything out of me today, just ask yourself this question, what season am I currently in? And I think a lot of the time we define ourselves in the wrong season and we just end up leaving frustrated, you know? I think I can share this story, but a lady came to me in church one time and said, I'm in a season of loneliness. And I looked at her and I felt very clear from the Spirit I should say this. It's not like a thing that Andy normally comes this direct. And I said, I don't think you're actually in a season of loneliness. I think your bad friendship skills and your attitude has left you without friends. Ooh. And I think a lot of the times we think we're in a season like that, but actually it's the consequence of something we've done, right? And someone told me I'm in a season right now of trying to figure out what I can do, and I'm trying to figure out that I have to live life by very little means. And I said, no, actually, I think you've been unwise with your money and you're in debt. That's why you're in this season. You know, that makes sense? And sometimes we're like, our marriage is really difficult. And you're like, well, you're actually treating your wife horribly. So that's why you're finding yourself in that. I don't think that's the season the Lord wants you in, you know? And sometimes we define our season, and I just want to ask, Holy Spirit, what season am I actually in, okay? And I think we can be in two different seasons at once. I think we can be in a personal season, and we can actually be in a corporate season. I want to end with this, but I also want to start with this. I think at the River Church, and I kind of want to self-proclaim this over us, I think we're in a season of spring right now. I feel like there's a lot of new things happening. There's bubbling, there's excitement, there's hope. And we're asking ourselves, Lord, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And there's an excitement. And if you don't feel it, then open your eyes and feel it. Because there's something happening. I mean, I just looked around the room. We had to get chairs out. And I'm like, how many people are here? You know, like, and I feel like we have more kids than adults, which is amazing. And we're in an exciting season. But that doesn't mean personally you might be in a different season, okay? And we have to, I think in the Western world, we don't realize that we actually have a corporate family as well as an individual thing. We look at it very like this is just me. So welcome. If you're new to the River Church, this is an exciting time to be here. I feel like I've only been here for 3 and a bit years, and I feel like this is the healthiest place we've been in a while, emotionally, spiritually, maybe physically. We just fasted for a while, so a lot of us are in better shape than we've been in. And but it's funny, isn't it? When you're in a season, you normally are just complaining about the season you're in, and you're not okay with that season. I have to confess, and during the season of January, we're fasting, it's embarrassing how much I'm in Mark's office talking about food. Like, the amount that we talk about food and all the diet changes we're going to make next year, and then the fast is over, and we're like, cuckoos, baby, let's go. And let's just eat some chicken wings. And but during that season, all we can think about is food. You know what I mean? All we can think about is food. And it becomes hard. And sometimes we find ourselves in a season and we're just ready to be in the next season. But actually, God's got you in the season for a reason. I went to the happiest place in the world 2 weeks ago called Walmart. And I was walking, and you guys know this. If you don't know this, I like playing with the toys in the kids' aisle. Not by myself, with my kids. That'd be really creepy. And I was walking, and do you want to throw that picture up? I saw this picture. Well, I didn't see this picture. I saw this, and I took a picture. And this is on clearance in the garden department. Is that what you call it? And this is, when I saw it, what went through my head instantly was, what is this doing here? Like, we're in the middle of snowdown. There's a blizzard outside. Why are we selling seeds? And because we preach, we try to relate everything back to preaching. I realized this is here because we have to be ready for the next season in our current season. And if we don't start thinking about spring, summer, and the rest of the seasons now, we're going to actually lose what the Lord is having for us, metaphorically and physically, right? I planted a bunch of daffodil bulbs, and you actually have to plant them in the fall, like September, October time. And we planted in our old campus a couple of hundred one day. It was super fun, and we did it as a prophetic statement because sometimes you plant something and do something, and you don't see the results of it to another season. And then suddenly in springtime, all these beautiful daffodils just appeared everywhere, and we put them under all these trees. And suddenly, when they started coming up, we all remembered what we did 6 months ago, you know? And I think sometimes we live in that place where we just want the season that we're in to be the season we want to be, and we're not. We don't want to be in what we're in right now. I got very frustrated with the snow. Actually, I woke up this morning, probably like most of us, and I was like, anyone done with winter? And I'm like, can we just get on the lake and hang out and be outside? And I woke up and I realized without the snow and without having a good snowfall, we see what it does to our land, right? We saw the fire, what happened with a bad snowfall. And without going through this season, the next seasons are just ruined. And we want the snow, and we want it for like 3 days, and then we want to move on, you know? This is just me. I know some of us want snow like all year round, and those people can move to Canada. And no. But we're not okay with the snow now, you know? We want it to be spring. And then when it's spring and summer, after 3 days, if you're like me, you're like, okay, when's winter? Let's sing Christmas songs already, you know? And we're always wanting the next thing. And I think we're actually designed to live through seasons physically and emotionally and spiritually. The reason I know this is because God is amazing. He's the same every day. He's the same yesterday as he is tomorrow and today. And through that, he's faithful, yet he's doing new things in new hearts in new ways all the time, right? And if he designed season and if he designed the world, that means it came out of his very being, which means it's the way we're designed. That's what we believe about God. If we're creating his image, then there's something about the way that we function that's actually from the center of who he is. So if the way the tide comes in and out, the way the seasons change, the way that the earth goes around the sun, if that was designed on purpose, then maybe we're designed for seasons too, right? And I think sometimes I want to just keep saying, I think sometimes we're frustrated with the season we're in. I'm a relatively new dad. I have a 1-year-old who is about to take over the world, I think, and a 3-year-old who has just come into his own and has just got an imagination which is beautiful. And I found myself in a season where life is definitely not about me. It's definitely about them, and that's okay, you know? And I feel like I'm just starting to realize that, like, oh, now I'm in a season, which means probably tomorrow the season will change. I shared this with some people that I moved to the States when my firstborn was 4 or 5 weeks old. And I feel like when we got on that plane, the seasons changed instantly. I was never really a dad in England because it was so new. And I moved to a new culture and a new place with a new job and definitely a new language here. And I found myself in a new season. And it was a nice moment to realize that season quickly changed. But sometimes seasons are they kind of muddle together. And I feel like over the next couple of months, we'll see that when it turns into, like, what do you call it, Mark? Mud season? I think we have winter, mud season, and then it goes into spring. And I feel like sometimes we find ourselves in the middle of seasons and we don't quite know what season we belong in, you know? But I feel like if we know what season we're in, we can understand what moment we're in. And sometimes we have to define the season to define the moment. How many of you ever been in a car recently where you have to wait till the song finishes in the car to get out? Have any of you been in that? You're like, this is my song, I need this right now. And you're just driving, you're like, ah! You know? That's one season, you know? And then there's other seasons when you're like, this song was written about me, and you're driving and the windows are down and you don't care. That's another season, you know? I think I've come out the season right now where we're like, shut up, I need to listen to this song right now and go for a drive. Anyone else in that season? You're like, this, yeah. Those people like don't want to put my hand up. And the two words I kind of use for this is the phrase, this is just a season, or this is my season, you know? And when it's just a season, you kind of use the phrase like, this is just a season. And you're like, I can hold on, and I want spring to come, but you don't know if it's ever going to come because the snow never stops falling, you know? And then when it's your season, you kind of put your like shoulders down a little bit and you walk around like you own the world. You're like, this is my season, baby. That's what I felt for the Browns at the beginning of the season. I was like, we won one game. We're in, baby. Super Bowl, let's go. It wasn't our season. And by the way, if you're confused, I don't actually support the Browns. I just support them because no one else does. I found. If you're upset by that, we can have a counseling session like later. I know some people. And those people are Patriots fans. Because they like deflate the ball and cheat because they want their season. So, Lynn Deary, you're a Patriots fan, right? Anyway, I have to say Lynn Deary's name every time I'm on stage, so she pays me. if you have your Bibles with me, or if you've got an app, open up to John 13. And I kind of want to talk to us about what Jesus defines seasons in, and then we're going to get into spring. So John chapter 13, we're in what some people would call the most famous meal of all time. This is the Last Supper, the last dinner, the last feast, or whatever you want to call it. And this is when Jesus is reminding his disciples, probably for the 100th time, that he's not going to be around forever, you know. And in this moment, Jesus humbly gets on his knees and washes his followers, his disciples, his friends. He washes their feet, which culturally in those days was a big statement. To get on your knees and wash someone's feet, for a rabbi, you just wouldn't do that as a rabbi, as a teacher, as a leader. That's what other people were for. So when he gets on his knees, it would have been yet another moment where Jesus was humbling himself in front of his dear friends, you know. And Peter, who I can recognize with, who is bold but yet will just say things, said, "Don't only wash my feet, can you wash my hands and my head too? Wash all of me, because that's what I want." And I think Jesus is like, yet again, you've missed the point. I'm trying to serve you. Shut up. Like, be in the moment, you know. And I think if we could paraphrase it, I think Jesus would say, don't live, Peter, for the moment. Just live in the moment. And I think a lot of time we live for the Friday or the Saturday night feel, don't we? But actually, it's okay to live in the moment, just not for that moment, you know. And there's this moment where Jesus knows that Judas is left, and he knows he's going to betray him, and he's having like I feel like it's a final briefing to his boys about what's to happen. And so in John 13, verse 36 is where we'll kind of land. And if you want to throw it on the Sky Bible, Bethany. We only have one Sky Bible. One Sky Bible is down. So he says in verse 36, he says, Peter asked him, "Lord, where are you going?" And he's asking this question because Jesus was basically saying, "I'm not going to be around forever." And Jesus replied, "Where I'm going, you can't follow me now, but you can follow me later." Peter asked, "Lord, why can't I follow you now? I'll lay my life down for you." Now, the cool thing is, John, the writer of this thing, was writing this in Greek, and the two nows are actually completely different nows. The crazy thing about the English language is weak. I don't know if you know that. Our language isn't very strong, and we use words to very broadly, and we don't really know what they define. But the two nows, John wrote the two different nows because that's what they said. And when Jesus replied, "Where I'm going, you can't follow me now," that now actually doesn't mean now this very second. It means now this season, this period of time. So if I change the words, it's, "Lord," Jesus replied, "Where I'm going, you can't follow me in this season. You'll come with me later." That's why he adds that tagline, "You'll come with me later." But when Peter replies, "Lord, why can't I follow you now?" that now means this very second. See, what Peter didn't recognize is Peter wasn't in the season to go home. Peter was in the season to stay. But what Peter wanted right now is he wanted to go with Jesus right now. And Jesus was like, no. You can come with me later. Your time is not up yet. You've got a lot more stuff to do. And how often in our life, when the Lord speaks to us, we want him to do what he's spoken to us right this very second. You know, I believe the Lord speaks to us through your season. Right now, all the words I'm getting, and I don't want to manipulate this, is Andy, be still, know that Jesus is Lord, and all of those nice psalms are basically like, calm down and shut up. That's what I'm receiving right now because that's what I need to hear. But when it's summertime, spiritually, you're hearing completely different words about building up and stepping out in boldness, right? Because the Lord is speaking to you through your very own season. And right here, he's saying to Peter, it's not your time right now. See, Jesus knew the season that Peter is in, although Peter didn't. And I think the reason why we need to define our season is because sometimes the moments don't make sense. Sometimes when you're in a hard place, if you don't know what season you're in, you'll just be leaving frustrated. And you're like, "Lord, why are you doing this?" When I got offered this job, that didn't make any sense. I was on a sabbatical kind of thing for 8 weeks, and I came to get a break, and then within a couple weeks, someone's like, "Would you move to the States?" That didn't make any sense in that moment, but when I see in the season now, that season makes sense, you know? But sometimes that moment doesn't make sense. And I wonder how many of us are having moments right now where the moment doesn't make any sense. Maybe the way you're raising your kids doesn't make sense right now. Maybe your marriage, maybe your financial situation, maybe your walk even with Jesus, whatever decision you're making, maybe that moment doesn't make sense. And you're like, Lord, why are you letting X, Y, and Z happen that doesn't kind of go with your character? But when you take a step back and you know what season you're in, you can start seeing the beautiful puzzle pieces being laid in front of you. Serena, do you want to come up? And I think, I'll share this. This is something hypothetically that it kind of happened, but I changed the words just to kind of give you like a picture of what's happening. It's like imagining God telling you, hey, I'm going to do something big with your life. And you replying, does something big with my life start right now? Like, are we going to do it right now? And the reason I share that kind of hypothetical story, which is kind of hypothetical but kind of not, is because sometimes when the Lord speaks to us or something in our life happens, we want it to happen immediately. And I'm this person. I want everything to happen immediately. When some people ask me, when should this be done? My answer normally is yesterday. And that's just not realistic, is it? So what I'm asking is, ask yourself right now, yourself and your family, what season are you finding yourself in? What season is the Lord speaking to you to? So we have 4 seasons or 5 in Durango. We have the winter season, which is definitely defined by maybe more being withdrawn, if I can say. Maybe it's more pruning. Maybe it's more of taking a step back. Maybe it's a little bit of isolation in order to go forward later. Maybe it's just a little bit more rethinking and having the peaceful moments like right now. And then maybe we have spring, which is a little bit more, I want to get on the boat and I want to hike and I want to start doing stuff and let's get things ready right now. And then when we have the summer season, which is, it feels like everything in His glory is out and the sun shines and the birds and life is a little bit more at peace and the blue skies are out and things just make sense. And then we go back into fall where it feels like everything starts falling apart and we're moving back into a cold season in our life. So where do you find yourself? Where do you find your spouse? Where do you find your kids or the people you live with? What season are they in? Because if you know what season someone's in, you know how to love them. Because if somebody's in a good season and you're not, maybe you need to lean on them a little bit, you know? If you're in a good season, maybe it's time for you to be lent on a little bit by your friends, right? Or maybe you're in a mud season and you're just like, I don't know, you know? I just don't know, man. I believe the best way we can live our life is being obedient to what the Lord is telling us, no matter what that is. And if you don't know what the Lord is telling you, go back to the last thing He told you and see if you've done that first. And if we want to live a successful life, ultimately a successful life isn't the size of your bank account, isn't any of that. Surely it's to do, are you being obedient to what the Father's asking you? And you know, obedience out of the right time is not obedience. Do you get that? If the Lord says to do something and you go out of His timing on it, that's actually not true obedience. I'll give you an example. I often ask my son to put Legos away, but if he does it at the wrong time, someone gets upset. That's me. Right? And if I ask him, can you put Legos away right now, that doesn't mean next season. That means like, let's put the Legos away now. Otherwise, there'll be a consequence, right? So if the Lord has asked you to do something and He's asked you to do it now, not doing it now is actually disobedience. But if He's asking you to do it later and you do it now, that's also disobedience. He might say, your time is coming, you're in a preparation season. Then you say, cool, let me prepare myself for it. Don't jump into it yet. But as a church, I'll tell you this, and I want to change gears a little bit. We're in a time of spring, which means the things have already been planted, and we just have to wait for the beauty to turn up. Can we show that picture, Bethany? This is the campus I used to live at. That was it in summer. It's beautiful. And it's springtime. Do you want to show the next one? At springtime, this happens. For the easily confused, it's not taken from the same angle. But in springtime, out of nowhere, these bluebells would appear. And they would last for maybe weeks, maybe a couple of months, but it was weeks. And you could walk, the woodland area there was, I don't know, maybe 10 acres. And you could just walk, and the sunlight would stream through the trees, and the path would be overtaken with these the bluebells, and it was beautiful. And that's actually, I feel like, if I can proclaim, I feel like this is the season we're in the River Church. Yes, there's hard things, and yes, we're dealing with stuff, but actually the beauties are rising. And the beauty arises is because we've been through the hard times and we've stuck with it, and now we're in a season being like, let's just see the beauty of the Lord unfold. And the beauty of the Lord unfolds when his presence lays on a bunch of people who come together. That's when the beauty comes out. And he makes everything new. Anything new under the sun, Jesus will make brand new. I don't believe God makes bad things happen. I believe bad things happen, and he makes his beauty come out of it. My best friend died in a car crash when she was 21, and that day was hard, and I questioned a lot of things. But out of the beauty of her death, so many radical things changed in our community. So many radical things. Her brother, who's my best friend, who was just in a hard season, and it would have gone downhill. Just the phrase beauty from ashes just arose. You know what I mean? And it's not, I think a lot of times we say we have to go through that in order to that happen. That may be the case. But I think a lot of the time things happen and Jesus will say, let me even show you that beauty even out of that. That's how strong I am. You know? I think the enemy's plan ultimately in a gathering like this is to bring disunity. That's his ultimate aim, is to rip us apart. But it's funny that even through disunity, we can get reconciliation, as we've been talking about, and actually our bonds grow even stronger together. And there's something that the enemy implied for the death and destruction, actually he can use it for life. And I think this church body has seen a lot of that, seen a lot of tearing apart. But when you can reconcile with each other and you can have a helping hand, your bonds are tighter than ever. And that bond and it will probably break again. And then you'll be like, let's go. And so if I can leave a picture, I feel like this is where we're at as a community. It's time to walk through the Bluebell Woods. It's time to see some beauty. It's time to maybe just relax and being like, this is where we're at. Jesus, let's go. You know? Worship team, do you want to come out? We're going to go into a song some of us are familiar with, some of us are not. If you're not familiar with it, I would just say, just rest in it. Just be in it. But this song is called All Things New. And it's a reminder that our faithful Jesus, our faithful rabbi, oh, it's Jesus, I need you. And then we'll do that song. Our faithful rabbi, our faithful teacher, he makes everything new if we rely on him. And if we're in a difficult season, no matter what season we're in, you gaze your eyes back on him, and he'll let you know what season you're in. And maybe you think you're in a lonely season, but maybe you just need to have your eyes back on him. Maybe you think you're in a hard season with your marriage. Maybe you need to lay your life down a little bit more. Someone once told me my wife doesn't respect me. And I said, have you read the scriptures about saying you need to let your life down and die for her? And maybe no one's willing to respect you because you're not willing to die for anyone. So what season are you in? If you're in a season of joy, if you're in a season of summer, shine. Don't hold back. Don't do yourself a disadvantage. If you're in a mud season, find a friend. Find 20. Let them know. Don't post it on Facebook. Tell them to their face. If you're in a season of hardship financially, tell someone. Lean on someone. Ultimately with your gaze on him. It's the only way we can get through each season. I feel like we live in a community engulfed in depression, anxiety, and suicide, if I'm allowed to bring this up. And I think it's because we found ourselves isolated when we need to be looking at him. And when we look at him, and then we look to our left and right, we see hundreds of other people in this community doing the same thing. And we actually can be at peace. I feel better when I'm not okay, knowing that other people are not okay. I'm like, oh, you suck like me. Let's hang out. I feel better, right? If you hung out with people all the time who were just overly whelmed with joy, you'd be like, dude, I don't want to hang out with you. But on the ultimate, if you hang out with people who are always just sad and depressed, you'll go down to that level too, right? We just need to be real with what season we're in so that we can define the now. And how many of you are in Peter's situation where you want things to happen now and you don't realize what season you're in? Let me pray for us, and then we'll sing some songs and we'll look back at Jesus. Jesus, we thank you so much for being consistent. You're the only thing in our life that's truly consistent. You're so faithful. You're so steadfast. You're so loving. And Jesus, when we spend time with you, our bitterness should leave. When we spend time with you, our resentment towards other people should leave. Because when we're in your presence and we understand your character, there's no room for those things. But would you help us in our tunnel vision to see what season we're in? Help us define the season so we can understand the now. Because a lot of the times we're confused with what's happening right now. Jesus, we love you and we thank you for springtime. We thank you that you do make all things new. And even if the day is darkest just before the dawn comes, the dawn and the sun will rise again. And that you say that every morning the new blessings are available. Every single morning. We can wake up with breath in our lungs, excited for the day ahead. And on the days that we don't feel like we can be excited for the days ahead, would you breathe that fresh, amazing peace and breath into us? We love you, Jesus. We thank you so much for what you're doing in this amazing community. We thank you so much for the amazing friendships in this room, for the reconciliation that's happened in this room. It's clear that you're at work. It's so clear you're at work. Thanks for not forgetting about us. Thanks for being consistent. Thanks for being faithful. We love you.